Tyland Lannister is one of the unsung heroes of the Dance of the Dragons, well, if we remember the Greens, and in its wake helped shape what Westeros would become. But at the same time, his role in the dance and the impact of it greatly overlooked in the wider history of Westeros, and as well by a lot of book readers. Without Tyland Lannister, the war could have gone very differently, and it's possible that King's Landing may have never erupted into chaos after Rhaenyra eventually retakes the city midway through the war. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the role of Tyland Lannister in the Dance of the Dragons, and well, in the history of Westeros, and why he often gets so overshadowed. We must abide by primogeniture. As the Great Council ruled in 101, the male claim comes before female. And who is the male claimant, my lord? We've seemed to have killed them all. Grand Maester Munkkin and Tyland Lannister to the Council of Regents, Fire and Blood under the Regents, the Hooded Hand. Tyland is the younger twin brother of Lord Jason Lannister, being technically the second son by a matter of minutes. He was thus denied the honour of the lordship of Casterly Rock, leaving him to find his own place in the world with little to no chance of inheritance. He was born somewhere between 89 and 97 AC, making him likely somewhere in his 30s to early 40s during the Dance of the Dragons. We know little of his early life, but he was knighted at some stage, which would suggest he would have been trained in martial pursuits and likely served as a squire to a knight as well. We also know that when Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen visited the Westerlands in 112 AC on her royal progress looking for a suitable marriage candidate, Tyland and Jason vied for her hand during a feast held at Casterly Rock. Both the twins showered her with gifts, without success. Eventually, Tyland was appointed the Master of Ships and Lord Admiral by King Viserys I Targaryen, sitting as one of the youngest members of the small council, alongside Larys Strong, the Master of Whispers. The choice of Master of Ships is an odd one. Typically, the position was held by the Lord of Driftmark, given that much of the royal fleet was in fact the Valyrian fleet. But given the broken relationship between House Velaryon and its Lord Corlys and the Crown at this time, it's not surprising King Viserys would need to look elsewhere to fill the role. Yet still, the choice of Master of Ships is a strange one for a Lannister. Yes, they do possess a navy, used to protect trade and ward off the risk of Ironborn raids, but not on the scale of House Velaryon, or even House Redwine for that matter. There is some speculation that Otto Hightower wanted him appointed as Master of Ships with the express intent of later moving him into the position of Master of Coin, a much more fitting post to be held by a Lannister, currently held by Lord Lyman Beesbury, who was an old man and perhaps had supported Rhaenyra Targaryen's claim to the throne prior to the death of Viserys. The idea would track given Otto was intentionally trying to fill the small council with green supporters. On the night of the death of King Viserys in 129 AC, Tyland gathered with the other members of the small council, where they discussed the succession until dawn. During the meeting, Tyland pointed out that many of the lords who had sworn to defend the succession of Rhaenyra back in 105 AC were now long dead. He remarked that it had been 24 years, and that he himself had sworn no such oath, as he'd been but a child at the time, and it would have been his father's oath and not his. Ultimately, the small council sided in favour of Aegon II, which was all but a given since Otto and Alicent had stacked the council with men who were always going to be loyal to Aegon's claim. Well, except for Lyman Beesbury, whom was either killed by Criston Cole, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, or thrown in the Black Cells to die anyway. Thus was Tyland Lannister then made the new Master of Coin, which, as we've discussed, may have always have been Otto's intent. It was the first act of this Master of Coin that would fundamentally change the war, and sow the seeds of Rhaenyra's downfall before the conflict had even truly began. Though few could have known how impactful this would have been at the time, Tyland acted immediately to seize the royal treasury, the crown's substantial gold was divided into 4 parts. One part was entrusted to the care of the Iron Bank of Braavos for safekeeping, another sent to Casterly Rock to the care of his brother Lord Jason, and the third to Oldtown, the seat of House Hightower and the protection of Lord Ormond. The remaining wealth was used by the Greens for bribes and gifts and hiring sellswords. Thus, 75% of the treasury was under the protection of 2 of the most prominent Green supporters and the Iron Bank, one of the safest places to store gold in the known world. And yeah, that last 25% was all but spent in the coming weeks. In a war, gold is arguably one of the most important assets you can have. Without it, you cannot pay for food. Trade grinds to a halt. Men go unpaid and discontent spreads throughout a city among the ever-hungry small folk. And your own loyal men begin to ask questions. And this issue of gold would become a defining part of Rhaenyra Targaryen's brief time upon the Iron Throne. The city is yours, princess, but you will not hold it for long. The rats play when the cat is gone. But my son, Aemond, will return with fire and blood. Queen Alicent Hightower to Rhaenyra Targaryen. Fire and blood, the dying of the dragons, the red dragon and the gold. When Rhaenyra took King's Landing in 130 AC after the Battle of the Gullet, Tyland Lannister was among the members of the court who emerged from Maegor's holdfast to surrender the castle. Given he was the master of coin and thus knew the fate of the crown's gold, Tyland was taken and given to Rhaenyra's torturers in the hopes that some of the crown's treasury could be recovered. And this is why Tyland was brutally tortured for days and weeks, being partly blinded, gelded, and mutilated by the torturers. But still, he refused to give up the location of the crown's gold, a true show of loyalty to his king. There are many men whom would have broken under such prolonged pain. The impact of the hidden gold cannot be understated. It means that once Rhaenyra takes the throne, there is very little she can practically do to solve any of the pressing issues within King's Landing. Lord Bartimus Celtigar, her new master of coin, attempted to fix these issues by placing countless new taxes on the people of King's Landing that increased day by day, yet still only brought in a small trickle of gold because the economy within the city was all but dead. The small folk slowly started to turn against Rhaenyra, as the very little they did have was just being taxed away. But this also caused the already broken economy within King's Landing to collapse further. Food was in short supply, and people were becoming hungry and desperate. We must also note that it was Rhaenyra's blockade of the Gullet prior to the battle that had partly caused the food crisis, with many blaming her directly for it. Eventually, the small folk named her King Maegor with Teats, with the term Maegor's Teats becoming a common curse in King's Landing for hundreds of years thereafter. All this would lead to the fall of the Dragon Pit, riots throughout the city, the Moon of Madness, with the rise of men such as the Shepherd, Tristan Truefire and Gaemon Powhair, the 3 false kings, all in the end leading to Rhaenyra fleeing King's Landing north to Duskendale, and then her ultimate fate. There were many other external reasons why these events happened, such as the betrayal of the Dragon Seas at Tumbleton, but the lack of gold is a huge factor that often gets overlooked by these more spectacular events. Thus, this is why Tyland Lannister's move of splitting and hiding the gold was such an important and overlooked moment. But not only that, even after being horrifically tortured, he never revealed the location of the gold and stayed loyal to the Greens. So, in the dance, Tyland's role does become vital, yet I would argue he's remembered in the histories for more of his actions towards the end of the war and in its wake. Eventually, Tyland found himself liberated by the Gutter Knights under Sir Perkin de Fleet, whose forces had captured the Red Keep in a bid to seat his squire Tristan Truefire upon the Iron Throne. Once the Greens managed to reclaim King's Landing, Tyland would resume the duties of Master of Coin, with enemy hosts closing in on King's Landing. He proposed a desperate voyage to Lys or Tyrosh to recruit sellswords. The Corlys Velaryon countered that such a journey would take far too long to be of any help. When the question of Prince Aegon the Younger's fate arose, King Aegon II considered the Night's Watch, or gelding the boy, to extinguish Rhaenyra's line. But Tyland instead advocated for a far more ruthless plan. He urged for the prince's execution, maintaining that as long as he drew breath, Aegon the Younger would remain a focal point for rebellion against King Aegon. Ultimately, Tyland was sent across the Narrow Sea with Sir Marsden Waters and Sir Julian Wormwood to scour Pentosh, Tyrosh and Myr for sellswords, to bolster their dwindling strength. During Tyland's mission to Myr, Aegon II met his end via murder, leading to the ascension of Rhaenyra's son, Aegon III. To secure a royal pardon for Tyland, his brother's widow, Lady Joanna, negotiated the return of the gold held at Casterly Rock back to the crown. Shortly after his return from Myr to King's Landing, Tyland was appointed the Hand of the King, serving at the onset of Aegon III's regency. It seemed that he was chosen for the role, given part of the peace agreement was the small council and regency council had to be made up of men and women from both sides of the Dance of the Dragons, in an effort to heal the wounds of the war, and ensured no decisions favoured one side over the other. The boy will remain a threat so long as he draws breath. Remove his head, and these traitors will be left with neither queen, nor king, nor prince. The sooner he is dead, the sooner this rebellion will end. Tyland Lannister to the small council of Aegon II. Fire and Blood, the short, sad reign of Aegon II. During formal events, Tyland took to wearing a silken hood to cover his head, as the sight of his mutilated face was known to cause ladies newly arrived at court to faint in shock. His hood, while necessary, sparked countless rumours among the small folk, who whispered that he was a sinister, masked sorcerer, and began to refer to him as the Hooded Hand. Even though he had been a stalwart supporter of Aegon II to the bitter end, and had even pushed for the execution of Aegon III before he was crowned, Tyland proved to be a loyal servant to the new king. And there is the strange irony to Tyland Lannister's story. The boy he once argued should be put to death would ultimately become the king he served most faithfully, and would be the one holding his hand when Tyland himself parted this world. Tyland famously claimed he could no longer distinguish between those who had declared for the Blacks and those who had fought for the Greens. Setting his sights on recovery, he worked to mend the realm's trade networks, which had completely fallen apart during the fighting. One of his most popular moves was the removal of the heavy taxes imposed by Rhaenyra and her master of coin, Bartimaeus Calthagar, during her brief rule of King's Landing. To help the lords of the realm, he provided loans to rebuild estates and holdings ruined in the conflict. He also saw to the realm's future security by ordering the building of 3 massive fortified granaries to be stocked with food to ensure supplies enough in the event of war. Beyond this, he oversaw the restoration of the Dragon Pit, reinforced the city's defences at the gates, and even set aside coin for 50 new warships to be controlled by House Targaryen directly, though in the end only 10 of these vessels would ever be built, due to ballooning costs. Over the next 3 years, Tyland would work to restore the broken Westeros, and did a seemingly good job at this, making great strides in restoring peace to the realm. The life of Tyland Lannister ultimately came to an end in 133 AC, when he was struck down by the dreaded winter fever. Upon the 3rd day of that year, Grand Maester Munkin identified the epidemic among the sailors and whores of the docks and sent word to the Hand at once. Tyland moved with his characteristic efficiency to contain the contagion, commanding the City Watch to seal the gates of King's Landing and his court, though these efforts sadly proved insufficient. Throughout the city's struggles with the fever, Tyland remained in his post, appearing to suffer from little more than weariness, as he worked ever tirelessly. Yet, just as the sickness began to wane and new cases dwindled, Tyland himself was taken ill. He passed away after only 2 days of sickness, with Septon Eustace and King Aegon III beside him, the young monarch holding the Hand's hand as he drew his final breath. Tyland is unfortunately not remembered fondly by most in Westeros, partly due to his physical appearance after being tortured, giving him a sinister reputation, and partly due to his actions during the Dance of the Dragons. Some Blacks hated him even after serving Aegon III loyally for having urged King Aegon II to put Aegon III to death, and some Greens hated him for serving Aegon III faithfully in the aftermath of the war. It's very much a lose-lose situation for Tyland. He left behind no wife or children. There were very few to mourn him when he passed, apart from his sister-in-law, Lady Joanna, who was very much busy acting as a regent for her young son in Casterly Rock and dealing with the Ironborn threat. His veiled face led to tales of him being monstrous and evil, and some called him craven for keeping the Seven Kingdoms out of the Daughters' War and for not effectively curbing the raids of Lord Dalton Greyjoy in the West. Tyland had come to be perceived as weak and ineffectual, yet somehow sinister, scheming, and monstrous at the same time. According to Archmaester Gildane, Tyland was an exceptionally diligent and capable individual, whose strategic brilliance in hiding the royal treasury essentially guaranteed Rhaenyra's failure and ultimate demise, even while later proving to be a steadfast and loyal hand to her own son. Following his passing, the office of Hand was taken up by Lord Unwinpeak, a man of Starpike whose aggressive and overbearing nature was deeply disliked by Aegon III. The young monarch frequently looked back with fondness and with great respect of the quiet devotion that Tyland had always displayed towards him. So while the legacy of Tyland Lannister in terms of the history books is mixed, something we cannot deny is his moving and hiding of the crown's gold during the Dance of the Dragons, and resisting the torturers of Rhaenyra drastically impacted the outcome of the Dance of the Dragons, and his loyalty to Aegon III in the wake of the dance, and all the work he did to mend the ills of the realm during his brief time as Hand, means that Westeros would be a very different place today without Tyland Lannister.